Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore. Time for another whiskey tasting. Today doing a tasting of PostModern, distillery you may or may not know about. Most likely you don't, unless you've driven through the Knoxville area. American single malt whiskey. This is a whiskey that in this particular form still exists. However, they now call it straight malt whiskey, which it is, but it's also American single malt. Now, whether it follows the rules of American single malt, the rules that are now coming out, that I don't 100% know. And so it's interesting the shift in names, but if you look on the new bottles, it also says American single malt on it. So they're covering all of their bases at PostModern. PostModern is in Knoxville, Tennessee, so if you are driving down I-75 and you go into Old Town Knoxville, then you will find it there. There's actually two distilleries right near each other, and the other one is Knox Whiskey Works, which has a jalapeno infused whiskey, which is really kind of interesting. Don't have a bottle of that, so can't really jump in and do a tasting of it, but this was one I was really impressed with, and this is made with a majority of cherry wood smoked barley, or smoked cherry wood barley, something like that. And so it should impart a unique flavor, and it does. It's 45 ABV, of course 100% malted barley, not like our pot still friends who are doing a little mix of unmalted and malted. And this actually interesting because it doesn't really have any corn in it, but for some reason I got like a popcorn butter note, just the butter end of it, not so much the popcorn itself. A little bit of smoke, spice, probably on a cinnamon kind of a spice coming through. A little bit of a floral note comes in. Some oak. And I don't know if it's just the suggestion of cherry, but I mean, I get a stone fruit that kind of reminds me of a cherry that comes through. And so very, very interesting whiskey. This is one of those things that you should watch out when you're going to one of your local distilleries and see whether they're actually making their own beer, because this is a situation where they actually partner with a brewery who makes the beer all the way up to the point to before they add the hops, then they ship it across town, and then they distill at PostModern. So it really is a teaming of two different facilities, a brewery and a distillery. And why do that? Well, because if somebody's already making beer, then they already have gone through some of the process. There's a lot of expense and a lot of craft that goes into that. So if you're a distiller and you just want to distill, you don't necessarily want to go through and learn how to make beer. Plus, the brewer is going to probably make something that tastes pretty tasty on its own before the hops come in. And if you've ever tasted wort or tasted mash, sour mash, it doesn't always taste that great. So, because especially sour mash, you will kind of get into that sour flavor, and you wouldn't really want to drink it on its own. But there's a couple of distilleries that I know of that actually really pay attention to their beer before they make their whiskey, and they make that beer in-house. And that would be New Riff, right south of Cincinnati, or Chattanooga, which is in Tennessee, of course. And they both have brewers who came from Sam Adams. So they know how to make beer, and I think it actually does. There's this thing that they'll say, well, distillation can cover all manner of sins. Well, sort of, maybe, but I mean, it does come to the skill of the distiller. But, I think starting with a really good beer is just saying, hey, that's less that we have to worry about the distilling process creating that great flavor for us. It's already been created in the beer. So, all right, I am going to sip this. Nice mouthfeel to it. This is in new charred oak barrels. Ooh, pepper comes through on the finish. Flavor-wise, in the middle, I don't know that I necessarily get much more than maybe a stone fruit. It could be, it's like a darker apple note, maybe that cherry note. Doesn't actually get as much out of the barrel. Like you would almost expect it to have some bourbon-esque character to it, like a lot of vanilla coming through. There's a hint, little floral vanilla coming in there. Char, definitely the char comes through, but it's not overly aggressive. But I don't get any toffee out of this. That part doesn't come through. Really interesting, because Scotch is going to be made in a used bourbon barrel or in a sherry barrel, and so it's not going to have, that's why I can sit in that barrel for so long. It's not going to have as intense a flavor impact. But if you've ever had a Scotch or Irish whiskey that's been aged in virgin oak, which is basically saying it's new charred oak, then that vanilla influence is usually a lot heavier, but I'm not really getting it in this. This is a very interesting whiskey, and I have enjoyed this whiskey along the way. Sometimes it sits in the back of the cabinet, and I don't think about it firsthand when I'm grabbing for a whiskey to drink on a particular evening. But this is really well done. I think that it makes me interested in going back when I go through Knoxville, doing a tasting, seeing what the differences are going to be with the single malt, and see, because if it's still in this range, I definitely need to get myself a second bottle of it. What about you? Do you check out local distilleries? Have you heard any distilleries that are highly focused on their beer and maybe have brewers that have come in, or they've teamed with brewers to do their whiskey? I think it's a great idea. Let everyone have their own specialty and do it the best they know how. Bring it together for a really great spirit. So yeah, I honestly think that, it's hard for me to say that I would put this up there with, it's between good and very good. I would say that the stuff that I have categorized is very good, has some complexity to it, a little more complexity. This has a lot of complexity on the nose, but it's a little bit more one-dimensional through the taste, and then towards the finish it starts to bring some other stuff. But if I'm not going to give a high rating to, say, I'm not going for the very good on something like Powers that I can easily drink. This kind of fits in that same area where it's just a really good, nice drinker. Nothing offensive about it at all. It's got some interesting stuff on the nose, and then it's just a nice drinker from that point forward. So, did you enjoy the video? If you did, give me a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more of these videos, and until next time, cheers and slanjava. Cinnamon. I am definitely getting cinnamon on the palate, and a little apple note coming in there as well.